Yeah, it's funny because the word ambition and like ambitiousness are kind of the same thing, but have different little micro connotations. Like, what was Mother Teresa? Clearly, she was ambitious. Would you say she had ambition? Well, that makes it seem like it was for her, but she was clearly ambitious. So, if it's for the ego, if it's for you, then obviously that is a vice. But I would say ambitiousness, like as an opposite of like small-minded laziness, is obviously a virtue.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Catholic Founders Podcast. I'm your host, Silas Mähner. Catholic Founders is here to help Catholics realize that they have the permission to be ambitious, that God is calling us to do great things with the talents that He has given us. Our hope is that through listening to this show, you'll draw closer to God and learn new ways for you to integrate your faith into how you run your business, hopefully elevating your entrepreneurial pursuits from a goal into a divine calling. All right, today I have a special episode for you. Well, I guess all episodes are special, but this one is extra special because I got to sit down in person with Flip Howard, the founder of Lucid Private Offices. They have 29 different locations of upscale private offices. Think of like WeWork, but much nicer and a place that actually is helpful for getting work done. You might also have heard of Vatican Valley, which is the core office where Flip works out of in Las Colinas in Dallas. And they call it that because there's a lot of Catholics who work there, but there's also a bunch of churches in the surrounding areas. So it's just like a great hub of Catholic networking and business ownership. Every time you're in Dallas, I'd recommend swinging by and saying hi to the folks. Flip has been doing this since 2001. So he's got a lot of battle scars and a lot of tales for us. But they actually just opened up their newest location in Nashville. So I've been hanging out there a lot. And he was visiting and I asked him, hey, could we move our recording time from a remote time just to accommodate, an early morning in-person recording schedule, which we did at the Bungalow Studios, which is a new podcast recording place here in Nashville, which I quite liked. But listen on to learn about real estate, creating beautiful workspaces, family legacy, the pursuit of ambition in a virtuous way, and his perspective on the value of working in person. Obviously, he is a little biased, but he has some really interesting points there, and I think it's important for us to consider these, especially in the age of remote work, where many of us founders, we work from home because it's convenient, but maybe we should consider a little bit of that in-person stuff. So I pray that you listen to this with an open heart and that you ask the Holy Spirit to guide you and help you understand how are you supposed to use your skills, your influence, your assets to bring God's kingdom more into the world, to bring God to those around you. And one last thing before we start, if you are interested in getting your company or your services in front of hundreds of Catholic business owners every week, consider sponsoring this podcast or the newsletter that comes out every week. If you want to learn more, please email admin@catholicfounders.com and we're glad to provide a little bit more information. We greatly appreciate your support. All right, without any further delay, enjoy this episode with Flip Howard. All right, well, welcome to the podcast. Flip, how you doing today?
Thanks, great, doing awesome. How about you?
I am fine as frog here on this beautiful morning in Nashville. It is a little rainy, but it's still beautiful. Thanks for doing this. Obviously, we get to have this beautiful studio. We do this in person.
It's a great setup.
We last minute changed everything because they're like, we're going to be in town, so might as well make it happen in person. But give us a quick intro. Who are you and what's your company and what do you do?
I'm Flip Howard. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Lucid Private Offices, which is a private office focused upscale co-working space. We're kind of like a grown-up WeWork, basically.
It's much nicer than WeWork. I can say that. Exactly. I've worked out of WeWorks for plenty of time.
No, I mean, I'm not trying to knock them. They've done a whole lot of good for our, awareness of the whole industry. That they're the perfect fit for a certain crowd, and that's just, we cater to a little bit.
It's actually interesting. I didn't realize this prepping for this, but watching WeWork supposedly go public the first time they were going to go public. It was when I first got introduced to technology, really, because I'm from the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, and I didn't grow up with the internet. Like Silicon Valley was just not something I knew about. But when I saw that all happen, I was like, why in the heck is this company who's been around for 10 years, like not profitable? There's all this potential fraud. And that's when I actually started the idea of Catholic Founders. It was like, I imagine that if Jesus were a CEO of a company, it would not be run like that.
Yeah. That could be a whole nother podcast episode. Yeah. Yeah. They did a lot of things well, but, swung and missed on a couple of really key ones.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. We won't litigate that, but it is interesting. I didn't consider that. That's kind of the origin of for me being interested in this whole idea of Catholic entrepreneurship. But how many locations do you guys have now?
We have 28 that are open, and then a few more in development all the time. So,
okay, 28, and those are mostly in Texas, or where are they all?
We're in kind of Sunbelt, major metro areas: Phoenix, Atlanta, Nashville here, Dallas, Houston, those kinds of cities.
Nice. Yeah, I've been to two of the different locations in Dallas, and they're very beautiful. But
Awesome.
appreciate it. Excited to be part of the one here in Nashville too. But now I want to ask, when did you start this originally? Because you've been at this for a second.
Yeah, 2001. So 25 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing it didn't always go as smoothly. You probably had a different pitch for the company when you started, right? Was it a little different?
100%. Yeah, we actually stumbled into it. When I first graduated college, I went to Franciscan, graduated in 97, started a pickup and delivery laundry and dry cleaning service for college campuses. Did that for a few years, and we officed in what back then co-working was called executive suites. So we officed in a little executive suite, little mom and pop deal. And our landlord, or the lady that ran the business we were in, was going out of business. And we had a business partner at the time. We decided to buy it from her for $20,000. It wasn't like some kind of big thing.
Yeah.
And we kind of turned it around, and we immediately were making more money doing that than we were washing 500 kids' underwear every night. We're like, let's get rid of this laundry thing and do that. So then we sold the laundry thing, and that actually has a whole separate story. It's a great deal. We ended up selling it to some people over time who became really close friends, who then sold it to Procter & Gamble, and they were in 30 different states, and it ended up really well too. But so anyway, we stumbled into it. The first iteration of it for 17 years, from 2001 to 2000 and I guess 16 years. We were just like a copycat of a Regis, which I don't know if you're familiar with them. We were just very boring, very vanilla, just kind of drab office space, and we just had to be the cheapest one. Yeah. And that was our model for a long time. Then I had a business partner, bought him out beginning of 18. And so since then we pivoted, changed our name, changed our model, and kind of, moved a little bit.
Is it important to, I guess, because I know that you have a sense of interest in design and how spaces, we'll get into that in a bit, how spaces kind of inform your work. But when you were doing that kind of like, let's call it Regis Light, or like, the cheaper version of Regis at the beginning, did it like kill you inside because you weren't like able to spend on like making the spaces beautiful? Like, was it something that you just kind of like thought about, or did you just do what you had to do?
No, honestly. And I don't even know that, and maybe we'll get into this later too, but I don't really know that beauty and spending tons of money always have to go together. Our spaces I always thought were more beautifully designed on a budget than like a Regis was. And that was kind of one of our little values. Yeah, and they kind of were back then too. Yeah. And so we were a little better version even of that back then. And I was just young and frugal, and that was kind of our value proposition. It honestly, like, I think I used to on tours say like, you're not going to find like original works of art in the conference room. I almost like made fun of people who spent a lot of money on decor back then. Yeah. Now we have custom art in all of our conference rooms. But yeah. So we kind of, I would say, stumbled into it, but it didn't kill my soul. And there's obviously I have a utilitarian side as well. Obviously, you got to make the math work.
Exactly. Yeah. You definitely have to do that. You've been doing entrepreneurship for a long time. Did you always consider yourself an entrepreneur early on? Because you started that laundry folding business in college, you said, right?
Right after college, like graduated. Yeah, that was a crazy year. Graduated college May, started that business like in June, got married in August. I think got pregnant in December, bought our first house in like April. Like it was a 12-month period of all my life. 22. Yeah, exactly. All the advice is don't do all those things in one. But my advice to everybody is the opposite. Like, do all those things young. But your original question was, I've always been an entrepreneur. Yes, even in high school, like that business partner that I told you about, and most of the businesses we did were all his idea. I was kind of the implementer, operator guy, and he was kind of the classic visionary guy. But we in high school, our job was walking around, knocking on doors, and painting the address numbers on the curbs. And we'd go out for like 3 hours in the evening and make a couple $100 each, tax-free every night. Yeah. Hopefully the IRS isn't listening to this. But, we're like 15 years old, walking around making $50 or $60 an hour doing that. And my friends were working at a bike shop all day for $5 an hour. And I was like, I'm not ever going to get a job. So then I kind of started. We did various little entrepreneurial things like that.
Yeah, I think it's, as soon as you get a taste of it, it's kind of like, it's like, I can't go back, Even if it's just like a tiny bit of money, especially like as you get older and make more money. It's just so hard to go back. At least that's my perspective on it.
No, I've never had a paycheck to me in my life ever. I don't.
Yeah. I definitely, once my business was going my recruitment business, I just, even though like it's not the most fun business in the world, like I don't have to report to HR. Like there's so many things that I love about it. So now the reason I ask you this question is mainly, I'm curious if this might sound like a weird question, but how do you define yourself? Because I think as entrepreneurs who are Catholic, it can be, as entrepreneurs in general, like we kind of tie ourselves to our identity as building stuff and being an entrepreneur, and we think a lot about our businesses all the time.
Sure.
Whether you're in the shower, trying to go to sleep, whatever, like always thinking about it. So how do you define yourself, and how do you try to separate that, if necessary, from being a child of God?
Yeah, it's a great question because the answer that I would give you, I obviously don't always live out, so
I don't think any of us ever do these things perfectly, so right.
I will say half of it I'm good at, half of it I'm bad at. I mean, the turning on, turning off thing, actually, I'm better at than most people. When I'm at work, I don't really remember that I have a home. And when I'm at home, I don't really remember that I have a job too much. I'm pretty good about, like, I turn off my phone. I try to be super present. But yeah, you tie up your identity and being the this or the that. If you're the guy with the big house and the fancy car, like it's hard to not kind of, whatever, buy into the, whatever. But I would say when you say, how do you define yourself or something like that? For me, it's less about, I mean, yes, I like being an entrepreneur, but I don't really care that much. Like my main thing, when you just asked the question, I was like, okay, if there were one thing that I want to try to live out, for me, it's just, I'm like a joy person. I like it for myself. I like to relish things. Like my wife's like, do we have to make every meal a celebration? Like, do I have to every night when I get home, have drink from 3 different bottles of wine and taste charcuterie and like have everything be a celebration? But I just try to do that all day at work. I try to do that all the time. I like relishing and bringing joy more than like this specific career path or, if I got out of this business, got into another business, I don't really feel like much would change about me.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I think that it's probably worth considering for other people who haven't figured that out yet. Cause especially when you're starting, like you got to make you got to make money, you got to make the business work. And once it starts working, then you can take your mind off of it a little bit. But I think it's interesting to consider, like, is there a charism that you've been given, right? Is there something that God has kind of given you as a unique skill? My dad actually did this thing where for all of us, while my mom was pregnant with us, he'd pray for a particular gift for each of us, and the one he prayed for me was joy, actually. So it's interesting. I've always noticed that, right? My wife tries to tell me to calm down sometimes. Yeah, I think it's the same, probably the same. But
how long have you been married?
We've been married. Let's see. I always have a hard time with this question. I think 2.5 years.
What a trick question.
I can't remember times. Well, we did the same thing actually. So we got married, then we moved back to Wisconsin, where I'm from, because we were in New York City at the time, and then I started my business, and we had a baby all within a year too. So it's like it is messy.
Yeah.
It's a good way to really just like let go of things and put it.
Yeah, that first year starting that first business, I still remember I called my wife my sugar mama because she made $24,000 as a school secretary, and I made $11,000 that first year in that laundry business. I was working probably 80 hours a week for 11 grand, and it. But yeah, I got my teeth kicked in a little bit, but learned a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Now let's talk more about this real estate and built beautiful spaces. So I just want to understand because you have a lot of knowledge about how to make a space that is conducive to work, that is helpful for getting work done. Are there any core things, if somebody's decorating their own office at home or whatever, like what are the core things that they should be aware of, or your general thoughts about this?
Interesting. Yeah, my general thoughts, I'm not, I have a team of very talented designers that do the actual thing. So I don't know that I have a lot of expertise on, actual design tips. But I would say from a core like business philosophy, I mean, our company's slogan is work is good, where you do it matters. And there's 2 parts to that sentence. Like the first half, the work is good, I felt like was a concept that's kind of lost on most people today. Like most people try to avoid work. They think of work as a bad thing, but like JP2's encyclical, like on human work, was very impactful for me. He talks about how even all the things the animals do, even what beavers do making a dam, is just survival. And humans are the only creatures who are able to actually participate in creation through work. And work is what makes us fully human. And you actualize, and all of us need like some trust fund person who'd never worked a day in their life, there's almost no path to happiness. They're always a mess. And so, and I actually had a time anyway through that whole business partnership thing. I had an 8 or 9 year period where I didn't work very much, and it was very just kind of emasculating and unfulfilling to not. I've kind of gotten my retirement out of my system already, so now I'm going to work till I die. And I'm not like a workaholic. I mean, I travel a ton. We're always, it's not like I put in tons and tons of hours anymore like I used to. I'm not like lying awake thinking about work or anything like that. But I just think that work is a real part of what makes us human. So work is good is a real thing that I feel like more people need to realize. The second half of the thing, where you do it matters, is also a concept that I think is kind of during COVID got lost. It was like, well, I can work from anywhere. I mean, yeah, you can, work from anywhere. But I use the analogy a lot that people will pay $10,000 to go sip a cold beer at a perfect a resort in Fiji, and you can do the exact same thing, at a roadside motel on I-35 for $4, but it's just not the same because your surroundings matter. You're doing physically the exact same thing, but surroundings matter a lot. And it's the same in the office. And so I felt like there were two buckets of types of office spaces or workspaces. There's this kind of WeWork style on the left that basically comes from a view of work sucks. So like make it fun and play while you're there and kind of pretend to work, but have foosball tables and, that whole thing there. And then the other half, the other kind of pendulum swing side of the idea of an office was the kind of Regis style of work sucks, but shut up and come anyway. And so I was like, no, how about an office design around the concept that work doesn't suck, that work's amazing. And so we just tried to make a space that was about actually getting work done, not like escaping from work, but that made you want to be there and made you energized. And so, I mean, you've been in some workspaces and felt that's the goal of it. And so, that's kind of the genesis of all that.
Yeah, I think that's actually pretty fascinating. I'm curious, this could be like really into the weeds, but do you think that having a better space around you, if you make your environment a certain way, that it will help you to be a more virtuous person and to be more like, because work is good, we can talk about that separately,
right.
Just like, does the environment actually shape you, or do we have to shape the environment first? Like, how does that work?
I would say, sure. I mean, it's obviously not like this magic silver bullet that makes you virtuous. Obviously, there's a lot of dirtbags and beautiful offices, but it's got to be an asset and an assistance in that, because again, it's like you can go in and pray in a church that is ugly, but it's not the same as praying in one that's spectacular. And I'd say work is the same, just surrounding yourself with beauty. It's funny. I was having a conversation with somebody not too long ago. And we're talking about, this is one of the first generations in history where like our poor are fat. Right. So it's a different kind of poor. It's not like people are starving anymore. And so what separates, but I'm not trying to mean that poor people don't have it bad. They do. So what is it about, say, rich people today versus poor people today? Like, what's the main difference in their life? And really it's beauty. It's what's surrounded by. Everybody has 600 channels. Everybody has an iPhone. Everybody's car has more features than the richest man in the world's car did 30 years ago. But, when you don't have much money, you basically are surrounded by things that they're ugly, and rich people are surrounded by beauty all the time. And that's really the main difference between someone who's rich and someone who's not. My point is not that, hey, we all need to be rich. My point is that there's obviously, your surroundings matter a lot.
Yeah. Hey folks, as a quick reminder, we have recently launched The Faithful Steward. This is a free private deal flow newsletter for Catholic investors to be made aware of opportunities to invest in other Catholic-owned or led companies or projects. These deal types will range from startup investment opportunities to film opportunities to real estate, anything you can think of, it will be in there. And it's totally free. We are not charging for this. We are just trying to help connect the community. To sign up, you can go to CatholicDealFlow.com. That's CatholicDealFlow.com. How it works is when we get a deal, we make sure that these guys are Catholic. We will then package it up really nicely, send it over to you, and then you can take a look and decide if you would like to reach out. The benefit of this is that you get to remain completely anonymous from all those capital seekers while still getting the benefit of seeing those deals. So you get the benefit of seeing the deals without the publicity of being known. We are not gatekeeping here, so just trying to use our role as a community connector to help Catholics invest in each other, and doing this all again for free. If you are a Catholic builder who is looking to raise capital, whether that again is for a film, for real estate, for a startup, or just a mom and pop brick and mortar business, you can go to CatholicDealFlow.com to sign up. You just submit your deck there and a bit of information about you. We'll reach out, we'll verify that you are in fact a practicing Catholic, then we'll package it all up and send it out to the newsletter, and if they're interested, they'll reach out to you. Again, that is CatholicDealFlow.com. It's completely free. You can sign up today. All right, back to the show. There's something I think about a lot, having lived in New York City, was there's a lot of these buildings that are just very beautiful, that are built in a way that, let's put it this way, they were not ROI maxing, right? They had the extra carvings, they had all these things added that weren't going to like increase the ROI of the building, right? And I think now it seems to me that the culture is primarily utilitarian. It's like, just whatever you got to do just to build it. We're in a house, for example, that was built, I want to say three-ish years ago, and it's already got like all these things you can tell it's just slammed together, and it's kind of like, it looks nice on the outside, but it'll start to decay pretty soon. Thankfully, we're renting, so we'll be out. But I'm curious, how do we bring back a culture, if you were to dedicate the rest of your life to trying to convince people how we need as people who are entrepreneurs, who have means of building things. How do we bring back a culture that builds things that are beautiful for everybody and not just for the rich?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and it's, gosh, I may actually give you the wrong answer on this. I may be on the side of the ROI. No, I'm conflicted on it because on one hand, let's say I live in Irving, Texas. Let's say we wanted our local Irving library to look like the Library of Congress or something that's beautiful with Greek columns and whatnot versus I haven't seen it, but I'm sure it's a horrible little utilitarian thing that somebody's going to tear down in 20 years, right? So we could do that. But, if you polled all the taxpayers, we want to put $500 million towards that, or we'd rather have like a swim park, so like when most of those buildings were built, it was a time when most people lived in, basically ugly. They didn't have a lot of things going for them. And there was a few beautiful monuments that were cool. But, now my library is ugly, but I got a pool in my backyard. Back then, maybe the library would have been beautiful, but I lived in a shack with no running water. So there's trade-offs. And obviously, when development gets built, it's got investors, they need returns. And so the only way things like that would ever be built, obviously most of it's in Europe, most of it's probably done with, slave labor or whatever else. But obviously there's a lot of it that's happened in the United States, DC, East Coast, kind of stuff. Yeah. But the only way stuff like that would ever happen is from older people with tons of money who don't care about ROI, who really do want to like leave a legacy, right? Yeah. So maybe I'm too in the ROI world to be the right champion for that. I don't know.
We'll have to talk afterwards. I'll give you my
by means convicted in this opinion. You could probably talk me out of that. I guess I'm just wondering how you would get, the capital that you would have to move to do that. Something's got to give, right? And so there's now less swim parks if you're going to build more beautiful libraries, right?
Well, I think, part of it is, and then we're not going to have time to unpack all of this, but I do think that part of it is people used to spend their own money to build these things, right? If you think about Carnegie built a lot of libraries, right? And he did that on his own money, right? He had some other things negative about him, but he did all this on his own dime. There's a lot of people who I've heard about who have like referenced like because that library existed, like that really helped them in their career and stuff. So I do think that there's a responsibility of people who have made money to take care of the people around them. But I also think that now we have abdicated most of the sense of responsibility to our neighbor because we assume the government will do it. And it's hard because the people who are wealthy are already paying a lot of taxes. And it's like, well, you expect me to be wealthy and pay all these taxes and do these things that the government claims they're going to do. So I don't really want to get into that, but it is I think it's part of the discussion as to why these things aren't happening, because we no longer feel that we have to take care of our neighbor as much because the government's doing it, supposedly.
For sure. Yeah.
So I want to talk about this legacy thing. So I had this plan for a little bit later, but I'm curious, as you have built this business and you're continuing to grow it, how do you think about how old are your youngest kids?
14 is my youngest. Okay. So I have 7 kids from 28 down to 14.
Okay. So how do you think about legacy and kind of succession? Do you intend, hey, I want this to be a family business ideally that my kids come and run? Do I, how do I, we mentioned earlier, right? Like if my kids get a trust fund, like maybe they're not going to value work and they might just kind of like loaf around. How do you think about this and preparing them that, if we do pass this on to them, if there is some sort of like built up established wealth, how can I prepare them to be stewards of that, to take care of more people than I could ever in my life, because they'll be able to continue compounding the growth of this thing?
Yeah, I do have I spend a lot of time talking about this with a lot of friends, and no, it will not be a family business. It will not be handed on to any of my kids. All of my kids have worked for me in various capacities, doing, normal roles to get them good experience. But I'll never like pass on the business. I've seen, for several reasons, the trust fund thing we talked about, but even just family dynamics, I've seen too many fractured family dynamics based on, on combining a major piece of the family's wealth with work performance and people and fighting and stuff. And I don't want to do that. I've told all of my kids, like, there's no trust fund and there's no company being handed down. I would love to invest in their own companies. That's, if it came down to that, I would just sell the company and use the money to invest in they could each, maybe run their own thing if they felt called to do that sort of thing. But yeah, the whole value of a dollar and all that is tough, because I think there's a lot of people who they're into not spoiling their kids and making sure their kids, understand the value of a dollar, but they put so much emphasis on the dollar while trying to de-emphasize that they don't want to give them things and make them feel entitled, but they still make them really dwell on money too much. We try to not make money a big topic of conversation. It's not I'm not someone who measures people's success by their wealth. So like my when my daughters have boyfriends or my son-in-law, I try, there's kind of a typical father-in-law thing to be like, so what do you do? What are you going to do to provide for my daughter? Like, I go out of my way to make sure I never talk about work and career with them. Like, I care if they take care and love my daughters. You know what? They can do that poor, they can do that rich. I don't really care. And I want that to be kind of front and center, that they know that there's not like pressure from me to try to burn the midnight oil to be, you know, financially successful. But then there's the work ethic part of it, because you can take that too far. And like I've watched in my own life, I kind of had maybe I call it a roughly 10-year period where I worked too many hours. And then I had kind of an 8-year period where I didn't work enough hours. And I think I'm finally kind of finding it now, right? But I've watched the way that those different phases kind of impacted different kids and their idea of work. And it's important for kids to see their dad work, not work too much, not love work, but work. You know, so.
No, I agree with that. I'd be curious. I'll send you a book after we're done that you should check out. It's called Leaving a Legacy. A Catholic guy named Johann Kurtz. He's doing some very interesting work around this thought process. But it's interesting. I don't want to like kind of debate your position on it, but I'll say that his general take is that a lot of the boomer generation says, I'm not going to give my kids anything, right? Maybe they'll help with their college or something like that, but they're not going to pass anything down, and they want to spend all their money while they're living or give it to charity, right? And he says that the reason many of them do that is because they say the same thing. They say, oh, it'll just ruin them. Like, they won't have to work. They'll be lazy, whatever. Because I had to work for it, so they should work for it too. And
Which is, by the way, the worst logic ever. I had to, therefore they.
Yes,
is
exactly.
never a good way to start a sentence. Yeah,
exactly. But then he goes on to say his belief is that in many cases it's because they weren't either not given the tools to, or they don't want to put in the effort to teach their children how to deal with money, right? To teach their children how to inherit something, right? If you think about like in the former ages, right, where we had kings that they were like trained to how to be a diplomat and how to like manage the finances of the country, all that stuff. But it's an interesting book. I think you'll enjoy it. I'll send you a copy.
Well, and just to sort of clarify, don't really know that I have a strong position to even be debated, but I'm not necessarily against the concept of a meaningful inheritance either. I'm really more against is too strong. Against, in my case, the kind of family business dynamic because of some of the potential. It just seems like, if this thing is this, and why not just do separate ones? Like there's so much less potential for disaster there doing that. On the actual amount to leave versus the amount to spend versus the amount to give away, I haven't. Yeah,
that's interesting.
I haven't really put a whole lot of thought to that. It's probably somewhere in the middle. It's not I'm not leaving them anything kind of thing, but it's not a
For you, it's specifically about the business itself. And
correct.
Okay, I see.
Correct.
That's interesting. I don't have necessarily super strong opinions on this either, but I have wondered if you do it well, if having a family business can actually be a means to keep the family together, because you intentionally teach them how to put on your family hat versus your business hat. Like, hey, I'm your dad right now, but hey, I'm your business partner right now. Like, we got to have separate discussions.
Oh, I'm not saying it never works. I've seen it work a lot.
Yeah.
And maybe it could really work in our family too, but it's like our family dynamic is so amazing. Like, why would I want to take a chance on it not working? Yeah. What am I trying to add to this? Like, it's almost like there's nothing to add to this dynamic right now. So
that's interesting.
That's what.
Okay. Interesting. Fair play. Now, I want to talk about back to office spaces again. Obviously, you guys are building spaces for people to come and to work in. Do you have a strong opinion about working remotely versus in person? Like, I want to text there.
Yes, and not fully absolute, not in every case. And I work from home some. I work from home some every single day. I like having multiple spaces. But yeah, I could talk for an hour and a half about this. Obviously, I'm not unbiased. We sell office space, so. But I really do believe that, like if you want to have a mediocre work life and a mediocre home life, use the same space for both. And I think that you need to be able to, in order to work your best. So during COVID, when no one went to the office, right? And I was working from home all the time. And I thought I was being really productive, but I was like, well, that's just me because I'm driven and I'm the owner and I'm this and I'm that. And so I have a great setup. I have a, huge desk monitor set up. I can do all the things, like the exact same things at home. So, and then when COVID was kind of over and I went back to the actual office, I remember looking down like 1 or 2 o'clock thinking, man, that was a good day. I got a lot done today. And it's like, it's only 1 o'clock. Like I didn't realize that I wasn't being productive when I was home. I thought I was. And so most of these studies on like productivity from home, it's like self-reported. Everybody thinks they're awesome.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things. I just believe, everyone knows about the spontaneous interactions at work and building a culture and all those kinds of things. obviously there are some people, and we have maybe 130 employees, I think.
Okay.
I don't know how many are fully remote, but it's probably 10 or 15 or something. And some of them are some of my top employees. I mean, it works out amazingly well. I'm not saying that it can never work.
Yeah.
However, I would still say, even in those cases, if they lived where one of our locations was, and if they, could, and within a 30-minute drive, get to one of ours, it would be even better, because they'd be more ingrained. And I have a lot of people kind of on like my top executive team who don't live anywhere near that Las Colinas office, but who drive there every day to come be around, because they know that that's where the magic happens. And I always say it's kind of like when you're on vacation on the beach with a cell phone, you can keep balls from dropping. You can keep things in the air. You can keep working from the beach, but you're not going to really move the ball forward. You're not going to be advancing the thing while you're doing it. And that, to me, that's what, remote work is like.
Yeah, I mean, I think about this a bit because I have an office space at home now because we have we got a bigger house, so I can have my own podcasting studio in person, or my own remote office and everything. But the longer I've been at this company, the more I'm like, I just really wish I could. All of my employees are overseas too, so it's like it's not like I could just easily bring them in. But I do miss having an office, and when I go to a working space, it's so nice to have a little bit of separation for when you, not only like the time in the car driving home, right, but also that there is a separation. And I'm not at a point where I don't work when I get home. I still end up working quite a lot, but I do think it's a fascinating thing to consider, especially like my children. My daughter is 18 months, so she's very small, but as the kids get older and as we have more kids, I definitely think I'm going to have to fix some of the, like, how many hours I work and like have more of that family time so that it is separated, because otherwise it's just going to be consuming, right?
Yeah, my wife actually was so glad to get me out of the house back to work. I know that's a common joke. Everybody's like, "Oh, I bet your wife," but she articulated it. She said, "You've got to get out of here, because this home has always been just a place of joy and peace. And you working from here makes it not that." She's like, "Even when I'm on a different floor, but she hears me doing this or that, or stressing out about this or getting mad about that or whatever." And it's, that needs to not be there, kind of. She's like, "You need to take that somewhere else, because that's not the you that's here with us all day, or in the evenings and on weekends and whatnot, usually." And not that I'm a different person at work, but it's just a different dynamic.
Yeah.
I try very hard to, like, if I'm in the car driving, I'm always on the phone, except for the 5 minutes home. But between work and home, I try to never make a phone call. I try to just, pray a little bit, mentally prepare. So like when my hand touches that knob to go inside the door, it's like, okay, this is go time. This is not like time to relax and take care of me. And like, this is time to go be the person who brings joy to this whole environment right here.
Yeah. How do you then, if you have I mean, for you, I think it sounds like you're pretty close to where you work. How do you also integrate that family time? Because I've thought about this a little bit, where it's like, I didn't have this discussion on the podcast, but I was debating with somebody, should we encourage our employees to work remotely so that they can be with their families and, pray the Angelus together and have lunch together and like purposely build an environment that is centered around family? But then there's also this other angle where it's like, it's good to have a separation. So when you are working in an office, what are the core things that you try to do in order to make sure that you have that family life and you're still kind of making your life oriented around the family?
Yeah.
Quick question for all the Catholic business owners listening. Are you running your business, or is your business running you through all of the admin tasks that you're doing on a regular basis? We see so many founders doing repeatable administrative tasks, and that's why we started Paraclete VA. We bridge the gap by connecting you with high-quality, Catholic, and vetted virtual assistants from all around the world who come from our existing network so that we know we can trust them. And so can you. Many of our Catholic Founders Guild members have hired through this service and are using this to offload their finance, marketing, administrative, and other busy work so that they can focus on what really matters and growing their business. It's the stuff that needs to get done but shouldn't be done by you. The cost is simple. Pay $500 on the day the candidate starts and $500 if you're still happy with them after 30 days. Most hires take less than 10 days to fill. Just email admin@catholicfounders.com with a little bit about what you're looking for. We'll send you some candidates, you do some interviews. Most of the time, you'll have your hire in under 10 days, and this way you can start focusing on what really matters. Stop doing the busy work and start moving the needle.
Well, I mean, there's obviously things you can do to support families with maternity and vacation and all that kind of stuff that we try to be like over the top supportive of. But more than that, the first thing comes to mind as a far and away number one answer to that question is just respecting that when the workday is over, nobody, like, building a culture where nobody is expected to reply to anything after 5 o'clock. And that's a big deal for me. Like if I feel like someone is constantly working after hours, I know for a lot of people, like, oh, the boss is probably impressed with that. I'm like, no, we got to fix something. That means something's broken there, because that's not, I don't pay them for that. Like that's infringing on their, so for me, it's like, when they're there at work, I kind of want them fully dialed in. And when they're home, they should be fully dialed into that and not looking emails or, it can all wait. We're selling office space. We're not saving lives. I mean, I'm sure every business doesn't work like that. But in my business, there's no excuse for any type of culture where the people are expected to be checking emails at night.
Yeah. I mean, it's also especially, I think, for a lot of people who are in our community are very at the early stages. So it's a lot more effort because there's no, steady income for what they do, but eventually it would change.
But I'll push back on that a little. I feel like people in your generation tend to, I would say that you guys are more multitasky and less kind of all present. So my generation is better at being present. And so I feel like if you guys could be more present when you're actually there this time, like you then wouldn't need it to bleed over into the evening as much. It's kind of half presence thing there and then causing a half presence thing there. I feel like it's giving neither its full,
that's interesting.
Its full due. So everyone blames it on, everybody's like, well, my case is, specific and I've got to do this work at night. And I was like, I doubt it. I'll bet you.
Well, it's interesting. So when I did start, actually, I'm thinking back now. When I started my company, I knew I gave myself about 6 months to make it. I say, if this doesn't work in 6 months, then I'll just go back and find another job. Like I put it in God's hands. I said I'm going to work hard, make sure I put my family life in place, and go to daily mass. All of these different things I had blocked in the calendar, and then the rest of the time will basically be for work, except for when I'm I need to take a little bit of rest or play some frisbee or something, right? And so I didn't necessarily work crazy hours, but I still ended up working out that, God took care of us and we helped grow it. But I do think it's interesting that we have to learn that it is not the end all be all, because we tend to work super hard when we're starting because we're relying on ourselves for our income and we're not actually trusting in God. And we say I know God will take care of me, but I also got to work hard, right? And there's nothing wrong with working hard, but having things in the right order, I think, is the hard part to get correct.
Yeah, and sometimes, and I'm not making, obviously it's easy in my shoes now when I have a whole bunch of employees that can just do things. When I first started my thing, when I was working 80 hours a week, could that have survived if I didn't? No, probably not. But, maybe it shouldn't have survived. Maybe, maybe if I wasn't so busy just doing stupid busy work for 80 hours and I was a little smarter, I could have, brain engineered a better avenue to success than just kind of pounding more hours in there I did. But
now, one thing is, for anybody who's not super familiar, your headquarters, the Las Colinas office, is this great space for lots of Catholics that are there, right? So you've got this kind of you mentioned at work you have your own team bumping into each other and having these kind of interactions that can be very serendipitous, but you've also created a space where a lot of other Catholics can gather and have the space. Do you have any perspectives on how important that is if we want to continue to build up this Catholic entrepreneurship community, or just tips that other people could do even if they don't have a Lucid near them?
Yeah, I form one. I don't mean necessarily buy a co-working space. I just mean figure out a way. I think a lot of groups in Denver did this with Augustine Institute office space. And I think there's various places in the country where people kind of banded together, but it started with just a few. I didn't really intend to do it. There were several, I've been on the boards of lots of various Catholic things, and I gave free office or discounted or free office space to several different nonprofits. And that was kind of the start of it. It'd be wait, why are there these here? And then, Jeff Scheffelbein, friend of mine, was really good about, he has this big Catholic network, and he kept getting people to come in who wanted to kind of be around each other and bounce ideas off each other and feed off each other. And now it's just become this, they call it Vatican Valley. I was a few months ago, I was in the lobby and I saw the bishop in there. And he's been there, a lot of times. And I was like, who are you here to meet with? He's like, oh, no, buddy. I was just on the way back from the airport picking up these guys, and I just wanted to show them the local Catholic community. So we stopped in here, which is I was like, well, that's pretty cool that he knows to stop in here to see it. But it doesn't have to be a Lucid that can give some discounted office space to nonprofits to do that. Anybody can just form it. But it does matter. Obviously, community is a huge thing. And it's very... there's some really, really cool conversations. I love walking by the kitchen and hearing somebody, debating, Catholic social teaching on this or that topic. Yeah. And you're like, that's not normal work conversation, but it's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I find with, especially the younger generation, I know they do crave community. They crave in-person connection because they're so sick of screens. but at the same time, it's like pulling teeth to get them to show up to events sometimes. Do you have any perspective on like in the importance of as any kind of entrepreneur, like focusing on going to events, to going into an office, like doing these things so that you actually build that in-person connection? Because, I've noticed you can go to church every Sunday with somebody, but not know anything about them, right? You don't know who's next to you in the pew. You know their name, how many kids they have, but you don't know anything about the challenges they're facing. So what is your perspective on like putting in the effort to be unproductive by going to these types of events?
Yeah, and old people are bad at it too. Like it's hard to get people to show up to stuff. Yeah, I think that, I don't know if it's events specifically, but it feels like one thing I've noticed about your generation is there's kind of this like analysis paralysis for going and doing anything. There's like, there's so much optionality in everything. It's like, I feel like there's so much, analysis paralysis where it's just like, just do it. Just pick one and do these things.
Yeah.
I say all the time that the conviction, it seems to be the trait most common to successful people. Like they just take action and they just decide to do it. And so anyway, I think that that your generation needs to basically I don't want to say think less, but act more, act quickly.
There are too many options, but it is also up to us to just choose to not have those options, like to like cut it out, like get rid of Netflix. You don't need to spend 30 minutes picking a show to watch because you can just delete Netflix. Like you can go outside and actually touch grass and do something, right?
Right.
Now I want to circle back to good work. So we didn't really touch too much on it, but can you explain more about the idea of why work is good? Because I think there are some Catholics who I encounter who I talk about ambition a lot as a Catholic, and a lot of people will be like, no, you shouldn't be ambitious. Like that's just worldly. But I think that work is meant to be kind of like somewhat communal. Like we are benefiting our fellow man through our work. And I'm just kind of curious to hear more of your take on doing good work and why it's important.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's funny because the word ambition and like ambitiousness are kind of the same thing, but have different little micro-connotations. Like, what was Mother Teresa? Clearly, she was ambitious.
Yeah.
Would you say she had ambition? Well, that makes it seem like it was for her, but she was clearly ambitious. So, if it's for the ego, if it's for you, then obviously that is a vice. But I would say ambitiousness, like as an opposite of like small-minded laziness, is obviously a virtue. So, I'm a full capitalist. Like I love commerce. I love. Back in the olden times when somebody had chickens and somebody had cows and you could trade eggs for milk, it's kind of a win-win for everybody. And I was checking, if I drive through McDonald's for breakfast this morning and I give them $6 for a sausage biscuit, there's no winner or loser in that transaction. Like they're glad I came, I'm glad they were there, and everybody's better off for this whole thing. And so I really do believe that work, eliminating poverty is kind of a cliched, Republican phrase, but it's like commerce really does lift everybody up. And so I truly believe that, like what we do, Lucid Private Offices, I think if there were 10 Lucid Private Offices in every city in America, there would be less poverty in the world, higher GDP, more human flourishing. I truly believe that. Like I think that what I'm doing is not just to like make money to then donate it to charity. Like the actual work itself produces good for the world.
Then what about so you mentioned earlier that there was a time in your career where you didn't work a lot, like you just felt like, hey, this is not really good. So can you explain the perspective that why you think that it's important to continue working? Let's say for somebody who's like, let's say they sold their company and they'd never need to work another day in their life, why they should continue having some work, even if it is in retirement. Like why should they continue to be employing themselves doing something?
Yeah, I mean, this is not an all-encompassing answer, but I'll use one example. So I have a business partner who owns a third of my company. He's an 84-year-old family friend. And he sold his company for gobs of money when he was 40. So it's 44 years ago. He hasn't needed to work for 44 years. Extremely wealthy guy, but he does deals like mine. And when you talk to him, it's like talking to a 40-year-old because he's still in the game. And he's not a workaholic. He plays golf every single day, but he's in deals. He's constantly strategizing, and it keeps him young. And I'm not saying that perpetual youth is the goal here. I'm just saying that's an indication of what's happening, is that he is still if I believe right now that what I'm doing is good for the world, and then I sold my company tomorrow, and then I'm going to go just sit on a beach all the time, did I really believe it then? Or why aren't I still care about doing good for the world,
Yeah, that's a really good perspective. Now, you mentioned earlier, you referenced Catholic social teaching. One of the reasons we started this podcast is I find it relatively difficult to understand encyclicals. They're just written like such heady language. I always call it Vaticanese. But are there any ways that you particularly try to integrate Catholic social teaching into how you run your company?
I don't know if you'd call it particularly Catholic social teaching and how you run the company. I mean, there's, subsidiarity and solidarity, those kinds of things. And so I guess you could sort of rationalize it that way. Like, yes, I'm big on subsidiarity. So yes, I'm big on empowering employees. And yes, I'm big on not, basically not micromanaging and letting people have their own domains and kind of letting them become entrepreneurs in their own spheres. That's I guess you could say that's a principle of subsidiarity. But to me, it's not really, it doesn't come from some, like you said, heady philosophical understanding of Catholic social teaching. It comes from just trying to love in a gospel-y sort of way, in a very simplistic. I think that people can tell when they're being used. And so if my employees are just assets to me that I'm using, I think they can feel that, and that's not right.
Yeah.
And I feel like my responsibility, but that makes it sound like a burden. It's not. It's way better when you do it the right way, which is value the human person. Again, I'm not trying to say in some Catholic social teaching encyclically kind of way, but just I like people. And that's not like I'm trying to pat myself on the back for really trying hard to. I don't have to try. I just genetically am drawn to liking people. Yeah. And so that makes me want to, when I have a bunch of people in front of me, like, how do I make their situation the best? And I always say, like, if I have employees and I know of someone else who could offer them a job that would make their life better, not just more money, but their whole life situation is better, it's my moral obligation to introduce my employee to that person, to go have them leave me if their life, what do I want someone trapped in something that's not as ideal for them? And so you have to just kind of live it that way. And it's not like this. It makes it sound all altruistic and self-sacrificing, like I'm somehow, causing or taking one for the team. But it's not. Like, you get way better results when you actually, treat people the way they should be treated.
How do you, I think you might already have answered this, but how do you get your own employees to understand the same thing? Because without it being like, hey, this is the principle and here's why we do it. Like, do you just boil it down to, hey, you got to love your customer. You got to love your employees that work under you.
I would answer that question the way I would answer almost every question that starts with, how do you get your employees to? And the answer is, hire the ones that would naturally do that kind of thing. It's not about changing adults. Like, that was their parents' job. Like, I've never had any success really picking somebody and making them something else. You just have to find the kind of people who do that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's I mean, I think that, I don't know, me personally, I've been in a situation where I try to, like, I can change you, I'm gonna fix it.
Now, I will say really this, hard. You can break them though. Like, you can take good people, put them in bad toxic environments and cause them to not treat people well. But it's really tough to do the inverse. And yes, sometimes it works. I'm sure everybody's got a story of this anecdote that's the opposite of that, because clearly people change. But as a business practice, it's just too hard to count on doing it with regularity. So it's like, I remember one time I was on a flight on Southwest Airlines. Long story, I'm on the very back of the plane, but like the first one on, waiting for someone else to join me. And I was watching everybody fill up, and I watched this flight attendant help somebody with a bag, and the person was obnoxious, and the flight attendant handled it just beautifully. And I talked to her. I was like, so why is this was Southwest Airlines back in the day when it was like the fun airline? I was like, so what is it about Southwest? Like, what's in y'all's training? Like, how no other airline's employee would have handled that situation that well? And she just goes, it's not training. They just hire people like this. And I was like, okay, fair point.
That's good. It is really important. I think getting the right talent is. I mean, I work in recruiting, so I have some opinions there. But I think that's good. Now, are there any particular? You mentioned like maternity leave. Are there any other like ways that you kind of go above and beyond what's normal in the industry for benefits because you just know it's the right thing to do for your team? A Catholic founder is somebody who recognizes that they are called to be an instrument of God's will in the world. We're not building a business for our own sake. We are simply stewards. If that describes how you think about entrepreneurship, we want you in the Catholic Founders Guild. We're growing an association of Catholic business owners who believe in these things deeply so that we can invest in, buy from, and support one another. We do this through our exclusive membership directory, monthly group calls, and our group chat. But there's a lot more to it than that. The Guild has a lot to offer. The cost is only $10 a month or $100 a year. So if you believe that you were created to create, join the Catholic Founders Guild today. You can do so by going to catholicfounders.com/subscribe and upgrade to any paid subscription. See you in the Guild.
benefits is probably tricky because I'm sure there are bigger, more well-funded companies that have more generous things on paper. What I think that we kind of go above and beyond for, and there's a reason, like if you look at my executive team, there's like 15 of us in the room. More than half of those people have been with me for 15 years or more. Like these people would all take a bullet for each other. And I would say the reason for that is not so much like on paper benefits. Again, a lot of them spouses, health benefits have more this or that. It's more just a knowing them and loving them for I know it's a cheesy way to say it, but it's like when one of them has something going on, no one has to worry. If they need something, they know they will get it. And I think they just knowing that your boss cares about you is, not just on papers is the biggest thing. I think that matters more than having a $500 deductible versus a $1,000 deductible on your health insurance plan or, whatever. Yeah.
It is true. I mean, it's very, I think people, they tend to forget about this because we're so used to, tactics or, all these like we said, benefits, but it is really like, do you feel respected? Do you know that they have your back? Like there's a lot of things that they'll choose to stick around even if they could get paid more elsewhere. I'm curious, one last people question. I'm sure you've had to do this before. How do you fire people well in a way that respects them and that's like charitable?
Yeah. I'll sort of tangent off that a little bit because firing people is actually near and dear to my heart. And it's such a weird thing to say. I know I sound like Ebenezer Scrooge. But I really believe that it's so hard to know from an interview who's going to be great at what job. And there's so many people in jobs that they shouldn't be in. And so I almost think like, I never asked this, but if I interviewed people and they gave me an honest answer to like, okay, last time you managed people, what percentage of people did you fire? And if it's a high percentage, I like them better. And if it's a low percentage, I like them less. I know that sounds terrible, but it's just, there's so many bad fits out there. And you're not doing anybody any favors leaving someone in a job they're not thriving in. And so I know it sounds like rationalization that, trust me, this is, it's not me, it's not you, it's me. It's not that. It's just that, like I said, I think at the very best you can do, you can rule out in an interview from people talking how they're going to actually do. Like you can rule out the bad ones, but the day you hire somebody, it's like 50-50 whether they're going to be a great fit for that job. And that doesn't mean you need to fire half of your people, but it probably means that half of your people either should be fired or should be moved to something else. And so I use the football and I use sports analogies all the time. But like if you got a huge 400-pound guy and you got him at wide receiver, you should probably move him to nose tackle. And the little guy that's this big, you move him out to the wide receiver. Yeah. And so there's a lot of that's happened in our company. Almost everybody on our executive team is in a different position when they started. And so there's a lot of that happens, but sometimes they're just not a fit for the company. And again, what I tell everybody, and it sounds like you said, like, what's the best way to fire them charitably or whatever, is the truth, which is that I know it doesn't feel like it now, but this will be way better for your life. Because if you're somewhere where you're not thriving, you're just cementing a lot of negative stuff that is really setting your life trajectory lower than it should be. And so, again, it always sounds to that person at that moment like you're rationalizing. Yeah. But I truly believe it. And I just don't believe in leaving people in jobs that are bad fits for them.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned it earlier, even if you have people that you like a lot, but if it's going to help them somewhere to.
Right.
Is important.
And I don't mean to minimize. I do know how traumatizing it is to lose your job. I mean, I do get that. And again, I still believe that in the long run, that's best for them. But it's, I don't mean to minimize the trauma of it because it's crushing.
As long as you're doing it in the right way, though. I mean, I've been fired from things for total nonsense, right? Like, but as long as if it's true, right, it never feels great in the moment, especially because of all those other things that you have to deal with. But if it's true feedback and you can flourish somewhere else, then that's the right thing. So So I have a couple examples of past team members from our last company I worked at, where like they're in much better jobs now and they're very happy. Like they weren't happy, they weren't really working, and they're.
Everybody that I ask about this question, and we talk about this a lot in these circles, I say, okay, of all the people that you've ever let go. It's a better word than fired, right? What percentage of them do you wish you'd done it sooner? And what percentage do you wish you'd waited longer? And there's no question in all of business that gets a more universal answer, and it's 100% to 0%. Everybody says that. Like it's so unnuanced, it's crazy.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, we're out of time here, so let's wrap up with some rapid fire. What is your favorite scripture, or at least currently?
Yeah. I mean, my heart goes to the Philippians 4:8, but just John 6, like the whole bread of life thing, Eucharist, the kind of the center of my spirituality is Eucharistic. So I have to go with all that.
100%. I think that we got to get the Protestants to read that over and over and over again. Hopefully it'll sink in.
Yeah, it does seem like a tough one for them. But yeah.
Who's your favorite entrepreneur?
Favorite entrepreneur? Gosh, I don't know. I've never been asked that question before. I am always fascinated. I'll go with my business partner, my 84-year-old family friend. He's got a fascinating life story, starting at fried chicken when he was a teenager. And yeah, he's kind of a role model for me.
That's cool. And then who's your favorite saint?
Teresa of Avila. It's a tight race with Thomas Aquinas and Thomas More, but I go with Teresa of Avila. I love her Lord Save Us from Gloomy Face Saints thing.
I like that.
Yeah.
And then favorite devotion?
Gosh, okay. I've never been a big rosary guy. We said it all growing up. I took 30 years and never really said it. And this Lent, I said I'm going to do it every day and get back on the kick. And I'm now at like 100 days in a row of not missing it. And I'm kind of loving it now. And like I said, 50 or 105 days ago, that would not have been in my top 20. And now it's my number one. So,
nice.
Yeah.
That's respect. Our Lady will take care of us.
Exactly.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on, Flip. Anywhere people should reach out to learn more about Lucid? What's your call to action?
Yeah, just come visit one. I mean, you can go to lucidprivateoffices.com, but come see one in person. It's totally, you can't really feel it online.
I'll tell everybody, if you're coming through Nashville, let me know. We'll go to Lucid together. We'll get I'll buy lunch for you. So that might get expensive, but we'll see.
Lucid will pay.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the podcast with Flip. I would like to ask you to consider a couple things as you walk away from this. Number one, consider the spaces that you work in, the spaces that your team have to work in. Does this space elevate their souls? If yes, great. How could you improve it? If not, spend a bit of time figuring out how to change that. May your spaces be a reflection of the order of your soul. Number two, when it comes to your team, notice that there are times when your team has a lot more room to grow in front of them that they can't get at your company, and be willing to help them on that journey. A lot of times people want to keep their employees, they want to do things to retain them. And obviously there's ways to grow with giving them more responsibility and everything like that. But sometimes they're just not, they're meant for more. And you don't want to hold them back. So use your skills and your influence to help them land a good job that will help them grow and really lean into the skills that God gave them. Again, we don't want to keep them holding back, because in a way we'd be preventing them from leaning into what it is that we talk about all the time, which is learning the skills that God has given us and how he wants us to put them to use. If you enjoyed this discussion and you think other people should know about it, really, please, seriously, I mean this, take a few seconds to share it with somebody else. We also greatly appreciate when people subscribe on our YouTube, because we're trying to get those numbers up to help the algorithm understand that we are legitimate. We do have many episodes out, and we've got some really good discussions. So please give us a subscribe. If you like to watch your podcast, then please go watch them on YouTube. It really, really helps us. And if you're looking for an office space that elevates your work in Texas, Nashville, Atlanta, or Arizona, check out lucidprivateoffices.com to learn more. If you're in Nashville, especially, come hang out with me. And by the way, this is not an ad. I'm just saying this because I'm genuinely a fan of these office spaces. I just love the way they've pulled these things together. And for anybody else who wants to be surrounded by other mission-driven business owners who are figuring out how to build culture and run virtuous enterprises, consider checking out the Catholic Founders Guild at catholicfounders.com/subscribe. It's only $100 a year, so anybody can afford it. If you can't afford it, reach out to me. We can talk about it. But anybody who is a builder or who wants to be a builder should be part of this. You can surround yourself with other people who take this idea seriously, that our skills are not our own. We are put here on earth and given these skills, given these abilities, this creative or co-creative and nature to be instruments of God's will in the world. He wants to use us. He wants to use the skills that he's put in front of us. He wants to use us as his agents to be good stewards in his vineyard and to help others around us. All right, enough of the rant. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. God bless you. And do not forget that you were created to create. All right, see you next time.